Hello. We're going to be talking about another book review today. We're going to be talking about The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee, Native America from 1890 to the Present by David Treuer. Ned Blackhawk states, the result is an informed, moving, and kaleidoscope portrait of an Indian's survival, resilience, adaptability, pride, and place in modern life. Rarely has a single volume in Native American history attempted such comprehensiveness. So, our author, David Treuer, is currently a professor of English at the University of Southern California, but is originally from Minnesota. A member of the Ojibwe tribe, grew up on the Leech Lake Reservation. His book, The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee, was recently published in 2019 and was up for many awards, including the National Book Award. And he does write both fiction and nonfiction. Before we dive into the remarkableness of this book, we are going to first do a book comparison. We're going to be comparing The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee to Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by Dee Brown. Now, this extremely popular American Indian history book is, like I said, it was published in 1970. I believe it has sold more than 4 million copies, and it declares that the culture and civilization of the American Indian was destroyed in the late 1800s. Now, Troyer read this book, I believe, when he was in college, and later decided to create a counter narrative, something that doesn't describe the destruction, but the resilience. Here is a quote by Troyer in reference to reading Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. Our history and our continued existence came down to a list of the tragedies we had somehow outlived without really living, without civilization, without culture, without a set of selves. As for present day native life, Brown wrote only, if the readers of this book should ever chance to see the poverty, the hopelessness, and the squalor of a modern Indian reservation, they may find it possible to understand the reasons why. So when Troyer read Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, it left him, you could say, uneasy, or really left wanting the truth or a whole truth of the American history narrative, not just the tragedies. So, in his book, The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee, he really dismantles the tale of the demise of the American Indian, that after 1890, after Wounded Knee, American civilization basically ceased to exist. So he focuses on the untold story of the past 128 years. He really explains that 1890 was not the end of the American Indian, but a new beginning. And he says that writing this book was, in some ways, selfish because he wanted to see for himself um, what that account entailed, what it included, but then also to tell the story that American Indian life is more than just a legacy of loss and pain, but it is a rich heritage. But he also doesn't want to just create a false and hopeful narrative try to cover up the traumatic past, but he just wants to um, more thoroughly or authentically explain the resistance and resilience that American Indians have had despite the difficult history. This book tells the story of what Indians in the United States have been up to in the 128 years that have elapsed since the 1890 massacre of at least 150 Lakota Sioux at Wounded Knee Creek in South Dakota. What we've done, what's happened to us, what our lives have been like. It is adamantly, unashamedly about Indian life rather than Indian death. So let's go through what is included in this book. The first chapter, contrary to the title of the book, actually deals with the years before 1890. So the book says Native America from 1890 to the present, but the first 100 pages deal with the history up to 1890. It really reads like a textbook and would be very good supplemental reading for a U.S. history or AP U.S. history class. It talks about the various regions of the United States and provides the telling of the history of those groups, those tribes that lived in those regions from pre-colonization up to 1890. The next chapter talks about how this really was the era where treaties ended and the Bureau of Indian Affairs began to insert themselves into the lives of American Indians. It also describes a new Native activism as well as the boarding schools and allotment time. Um, Things like the Dawes Act were put into place during these years. Um, the fighting life, this is going to detail new federal government policies to control tribal life, and then also includes American Indian involvement in various U.S. wars. The next chapter is going to describe the termination policy, the end of um, an era prior to this, prior to World War II, and it describes how tribes had to now attempt to maintain their sovereignty and regain federal recognition. Becoming Indian is getting closer to our modern history, where it's going to talk about the Red Power movement and the American Indian movement. The next chapter focuses a lot on the economic development of the 21st century, especially the use of casinos and their impact on tribal life and well being. And then the final chapter is really a series of accounts of present day American Indians that use technology in various ways. For example, he talks about the protest that happened at Standing Rock very recently, and also other efforts by American Indians to improve their quality of life on and off the reservation and using technology to do so. So this book has many important contributions. It doesn't dwell on the traumatic events, but it also doesn't skip over them. It really is more of a authentic history that doesn't focus on the death, but rather than the life that comes during and after these events. It combats many historical myths. However, the one really unique thing I found in this book was just the collection of stories. He includes an immense amount of personal interviews that are really just woven throughout um, the historical events that are more commonly known. And it really makes the history personal. You feel like you could be there talking to those people. The way that he writes about the people is very personal. And you really feel like you get a sense of what it could be like to live as that person or to know that person. Um, and most importantly, it exposes numerous examples of American Indian life, culture, resilience, and resistance in the years following the Wounded Knee Massacre. So I really would encourage you to check this one out. I think I have one more quote for you here. He says, "It is to remember the good and the bad, the personal and the social, the large and the small. We are, for better or worse, the body of our republic, and we need to listen to it, to hear, beyond the pain and anger and fear, beyond the decrees and policies and the eddying public sentiments and resentments, beyond the bombast and rhetoric, the sound, faint at times, stronger at others, of a heartbeat going on." I highly encourage you to check out The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee. I don't think you'll be disappointed. If you've read it, let me know what you think in the comments. Otherwise, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.